What if I told you the man who shattered Wall Street wasn't even a traditional trader? You're about to step into the world of Jim Simons, the quiet genius behind the greatest money-making machine in modern finance. Imagine this. You're staring at a blinking screen, uncertain about your next move. Now, imagine someone who rewrote the very rules of trading, not by gut feel or chart patterns, but by relentless questioning and refusal to accept that's just how it's done. Simons, a mathematician and codebreaker, never fit the Wall Street mold. He was a puzzle solver who asked, why should markets be different from the natural world? Why can't they be cracked? That mindset is the invitation he offers you. In his early years, Simons was already an outlier. You're not just learning about a trader, you're stepping into the shoes of someone who saw opportunity where others saw impossibility. He was fired from a code-breaking job, then turned to academia, only to find his hunger for real-world application was insatiable. Imagine staring at market data the way a scientist examines an uncracked code. That's what set Simons apart, his refusal to believe the status quo. Have you ever heard someone say, "The market is unpredictable, you can't beat it"? Simons hated that phrase. He'd ask, but what if that's wrong? That's the attitude you must bring to your trading journey. Gregory Zuckerman paints Simons not as a trading prodigy, but as an obsessive learner. He was humble enough to admit he didn't have the answers. If you want to change your trading psychology, it starts with a willingness to question your own assumptions, even when it feels uncomfortable. Simons built his career on open-ended inquiry. He didn't care for the glitz of Wall Street. He cared about patterns, probabilities, and process. He'd tell you, don't be fooled by noise. Find the signal and never stop searching. This is where your journey mirrors Simons's. Are you accepting the rules handed to you, or are you willing to rip them up and write your own? Simons's beginnings remind you that breakthroughs come from the fringes. He hired those who didn't fit, the misfits, the mathematicians, the physicists. He didn't want conventional wisdom. He wanted hungry minds. As a trader, you're often told to trust your gut. Simons shows you something radical. Question your instincts. Your job isn't to follow the herd, he'd say. Your job is to see what others are missing. His relentless curiosity was contagious. He didn't pretend to know everything. He made it his business to learn faster than anyone else. Can you imagine the power in admitting you don't know and then obsessively searching for what works? That's where Simons's story begins, and it's where your own transformation as a trader starts too. The greatest edge is not in secret knowledge, but in an open, relentless, and unyielding curiosity. The story of Jim Simons teaches you that the biggest trading victories start outside your comfort zone. Have you ever felt like you just don't fit the mold? That's your signal. Trading isn't about being born into the right club. It's about the courage to challenge everything you've been told and the relentless drive to find your own answers. If you want results like Simons, start by asking, what if the obvious is wrong? That's where real change happens. You're thrust into the heart of the action, watching Simons dismantle the idea that markets are pure chaos, random and impossible to decode. Have you ever felt lost in a sea of unpredictable price moves, convinced there's no method to the madness? Simons's entire quest was to prove that belief wrong. From the outset, he was determined to crack the patterns most traders couldn't even see, let alone exploit. This isn't about using your trader's intuition. It's about learning to question every twitch and tick, to treat the market as a puzzle waiting to be solved, not a wild beast to be tamed by instinct. Simons believed with absolute conviction that buried within the chaos were patterns, real, repeatable patterns that could be unearthed through disciplined analysis. Think about this. Most traders, maybe even you, are seduced by stories, swayed by emotion, and jump in and out of trades based on how they feel in the moment. Have you ever broken your trading plan because of a red candle? That's the trap Simons warned about. He insisted that intuition is nothing but another word for bias, a cognitive shortcut that sabotages your edge. Instead, Simons and his early team collected mountains of data, decades worth. They didn't care what the crowd was saying. They combed through every possible data set, from stock prices to obscure economic indicators, searching for anomalies. If you want to step into the world of the medallion fund, you must become a skeptic of your own thinking. Don't trust your gut. Trust the data. That's the mantra here. Each time you feel that itch to just know what comes next in the market, you're dancing on the edge of self-deception. Simon's built systems to catch himself in the act. You're learning that the most dangerous thing in trading isn't missing a big move. It's believing your emotions have predictive power. Simons rejected the gospel of intuition. He demanded rigor. He forced himself and his team to ask, is this real, or is it just randomness masquerading as a signal? The difference between a losing trader and a consistent winner, Simons believed, is the ability to distinguish fact from fiction, signal from noise. This is a direct challenge to the way most traders operate. Compare this with Mark Douglas's Trading in the Zone. Douglas warned you about the seductive power of your own beliefs. Simons put that warning into practice. He wasn't interested in what felt right. He wanted proof. Jared Tendler, in The Mental Game of Trading, urges you to notice and neutralize your emotional reactions. Simons went further. He designed systems to override those reactions completely. Imagine it. You're standing in a room with some of the brightest minds in mathematics, arguing not about which way the market is going, but about whether the evidence holds up to scrutiny. There's no place for ego, no place for gut calls. Simons's approach is a wake-up call to every trader stuck in the cycle of hope, fear, and regret. The real opportunity is not in predicting the unpredictable, but in uncovering the edges hidden beneath the surface. Edges revealed only by relentless, emotionless inquiry. Every time you get that hunch or feel a sudden urge to chase a breakout, remember, Simons built his fortune by attacking those very urges. The market punishes emotion. It rewards those who step back, analyze, and build discipline into every trade. This isn't just theory. It's the foundation of the most profitable trading operation in history. Practical lesson? Stop searching for comfort in your opinions. Seek discomfort in rigorous analysis. Challenge what you think you know, and don't rest until you can prove it with evidence. Your biggest enemy is your own certainty. Your greatest weapon is your willingness to admit what you don't know and test, and test again. That's how you break free from the chaos and start to see the patterns that others can't. You watch as Simons assembles a team like no other on Wall Street because he understood something you need to internalize right now. Your ego is your greatest liability. Most traders want to be the smartest person in the room. Simons wanted to be surrounded by people who'd make him question everything, even himself. Imagine the humility it takes to bring in mathematicians, physicists, cryptographers, even linguists, instead of the so-called market wizards or financial elites. You're witnessing the creation of a culture where no one's opinion is safe from scrutiny and where being wrong is not just allowed, it's expected, even celebrated. Think about your own trading. How often do you defend your positions out of pride? How resistant are you to admitting you're wrong? Simons's radical act was to build a team where every hypothesis could and would be torn apart, where data and results mattered more than anyone's resume. There were no sacred cows at Renaissance Technologies. This isn't just about hiring smart people. It's about destroying the very idea of hero worship in trading. No trade was above questioning. No strategy was too precious to be discarded if the evidence said so. Simons's firm, Renaissance, was an intellectual battlefield. Arguments were fierce but always focused on the evidence, never on the personalities. Can you imagine that? The ability to attack an idea without attacking the person who holds it? That's the standard Simons set, and it's the gold standard for any serious trader. Steve Jobs famously said, "It doesn't make sense to hire smart people and then tell them what to do." Simons embodied this. He hired the brilliant and let them loose on the hardest problems. Not one of them was a traditional trader. You're learning that the power of collective intelligence, when egos are checked at the door, is unmatched. You see it in the way Simons's team debated endlessly over model tweaks, pored over every result, and never allowed their personal biases to contaminate their process. Mike Bellafiore, in One Good Trade, talks about the importance of process and teamwork, the relentless focus on feedback. Renaissance took this to another level. If you want to elevate your trading, you must embrace criticism. Seek out people who see what you miss and abandon the illusion that you have all the answers. There's a critical lesson here for your own psychology. The market doesn't care about your pride. It will crush you if you defend your ideas past their expiration date. Simons' success was rooted in humility, not bravado. Check your ego, he'd say, or the market will do it for you. This culture of radical transparency and constant challenge is rare, and that's exactly why it works. Are you still surrounding yourself with yes men? Are you clinging to old strategies because they once worked? If you want Simons level results, you have to be willing to rip apart your own process, expose your weaknesses, and invite the discomfort of being wrong. True progress comes from the courage to question, to accept criticism, and to see trading as a team sport, even if your team is just a group of trusted critics. Let this sink in. Simons' greatest skill wasn't just pattern recognition, but people recognition, the ability to harness brilliance while suppressing ego. The Renaissance story isn't just about models and algorithms. It's about building an environment where growth trumps pride. If you want to transform your results, start here. Surround yourself with people who will challenge you. Build systems that encourage honesty. And remember, destroying ego is the first step to destroying mediocrity. You follow Simons deep into the war on human bias, a campaign fought not on the trading floor, but with code, equations, and unrelenting skepticism toward gut instinct. This is the fork in the road that most traders never take. Simons' genius wasn't just building better models. It was his decision to let those models overrule every impulse, every urge to play a hunch. Have you ever caught yourself hesitating, double-checking a setup, or worse, second-guessing a proven plan because of a bad trade? That's the very weakness Simons engineered out of his operation. At Renaissance, experimentation was relentless and sacred. Every hypothesis had to face the fire of data. If a strategy didn't survive rigorous backtesting, it was discarded, no matter who created it. You might think this sounds cold, but this is the bedrock of freedom in trading, liberation from the tyranny of your own emotions. Simons' mantra, if the numbers don't prove it, don't touch it. There's no place for pride in this kind of environment. There's only the question, does it work or not? This philosophy stands in sharp contrast to most retail traders who still believe that experience and feel give them an edge. In fact, as you've read in Douglas or Tendler, these feelings are usually nothing but psychological baggage, regret, fear, overconfidence, masquerading as wisdom. Simons took that insight and built an entire fortress around it. His team's algorithms ran thousands of simulations, ruthlessly stress testing every idea. If you want to reach elite levels, you must adopt the discipline to challenge, measure, and optimize every component of your trading. Anything less is gambling. The lesson here is brutal and beautiful. Results don't lie. Are you willing to put your process under that kind of scrutiny? Renaissance's best minds worked in teams, constantly tweaking models, scanning for weaknesses, and refusing to let any idea escape rigorous validation. Every edge was quantified. Every anomaly, no matter how small, was investigated. The market is ruthless to wishful thinking, but it rewards those who demand proof. When Simons' firm hit losing streaks, and they did, he didn't abandon the models for a quick emotional fix. He trusted the system because the system was built to outperform human nature. You're not trying to win every trade, the Renaissance philosophy teaches. You're trying to win over time by exploiting repeatable inefficiencies. This is the same hard lesson Bellafiore hammers home. Focus on process over outcome, discipline over excitement. Have you noticed how the market loves to bait your emotions? It flashes quick gains, then yanks them away. It taunts you with almost winners and what could have been. Simons' entire architecture was built to bypass this trap. By handing control to algorithms, ruthless, impartial, tireless, he created a machine that wasn't just faster, but purer. The algorithms didn't chase losses. They didn't revenge trade. They executed, learned, and improved over and over. You must ask yourself, are you ready to stop fighting your own psychology and instead use it to your advantage? This is where the average trader falters and where you can leap ahead. Let your results be judged not by lucky streaks, but by the integrity of your process. Experiment, test, fail, and learn again and again. Simons' journey is your blueprint. Let the data guide you. Build systems that protect you from yourself and never stop refining your edge. The path is unforgiving, but the rewards are unmatched. This is how you stop being your own worst enemy and start becoming your own best asset. You see what happens when a system actually works: wild volatility, stomach churning drawdowns, and an urgent need for discipline, stronger than excitement. When Simons began to scale the Medallion Fund, you might imagine the victories came easy, but the reality was much more turbulent. The models found edges, yes, but those edges played out in streaks of both massive wins and sudden losses. How many times have you thought about abandoning a plan after a rough week, a losing streak, or a string of unexpected outcomes? This is where most traders crumble. But Simons, and you if you choose, understood that the greatest rewards require the discipline to embrace uncertainty, not run from it. Scaling up was about more than multiplying capital. With each increase in size, the challenge was to keep discipline intact. The team watched as the very models that once worked on small amounts began to bend under the weight of bigger trades. The market noticed. Liquidity changed. Slippage appeared. New anomalies emerged. If you think trading is hard with a small account, imagine facing a sea of sharks when your orders move the very prices you hope to exploit. This is a world where discipline isn't optional. It's survival. Simons and his team learned that systems could only be trusted if they were constantly tested in real time, stress tested not just in the lab, but in the heat of the market. The rules had to hold when fear screamed for intervention, when greed begged to double down. You're being asked the same question. Can you stick to your system when it hurts the most? Are you willing to ride through the pain for the sake of long-term edge? That's where true traders are forged. Consider what Douglas would say. The consistency you seek is in your mind, not in the market. Simons and Renaissance built that consistency into their very DNA. They didn't let the chaos of the moment dictate their actions. Instead, they executed relentlessly, logging every trade, reviewing every mistake. Losses weren't reasons to abandon the plan. They were data points, opportunities for deeper understanding. You're not trying to predict. You're trying to adapt and survive. The Medallion Fund's wild swings became legendary. Sometimes their daily P&L could shift by millions. But you know what's even more impressive? The team's emotional steadiness. They trusted their process with almost religious conviction. When a model was in drawdown, they didn't panic or override it on a whim. They knew the research, trusted the stats, and let the system do its job. Your job isn't to predict, but to persist, Simons might tell you. Only discipline brings the reward. This is where the real-world trader falters. How often do you sabotage yourself by jumping systems, chasing hot streaks, or giving up after a loss? Simons' story is your warning and your inspiration. You must fall in love with the grind, not just the wins. The market's feedback is harsh and immediate, but the only way to build a lasting edge is to weather every storm without flinching. Practical takeaway: you're not competing for perfection. You're competing for survival, adaptation, and long-term consistency. Simons' journey reveals the real secret. Uncertainty isn't your enemy. It's the environment in which you prove your discipline. Every spike in volatility, every losing streak, every emotional test is a chance to double down on your process, to trust your edge, and to let the results compound over time. Remember this the next time you're tempted to intervene in your system. The path to greatness is paved with uncertainty. Discipline isn't just a word, it's the ultimate differentiator. You experience what it truly means to guard your edge with a kind of discipline most traders only dream of. For Simons and the Medallion team, secrecy wasn't a quirk. It was a survival strategy. In a world where one good idea can be copied and arbitraged away in a heartbeat, you learn that sometimes the strongest trading psychology isn't about risk-taking, but about the restraint to keep your mouth shut. Have you ever been tempted to share your system, boast about a big win, or even drop hints on social media? Simons' approach is your wake-up call. The less you share, the longer you keep your advantage. Inside Renaissance, even the team was siloed. Most staff didn't know the fund's core strategies, and information was strictly need to know. New hires signed fierce non-disclosure agreements, and even casual conversations were monitored for leaks. This fortress mentality wasn't paranoia. It was practicality. Simons understood that the real risk wasn't just from competitors, but from carelessness and ego. How many traders have lost their edge by chasing recognition or by trying to teach the market to others before they'd mastered it themselves? You might recognize the temptation in yourself. the urge to broadcast a new trading method, to seek validation, to become a guru rather than a silent winner. Simons' lesson is stark. You are here to trade, not to perform. The moment you need an audience, you invite distraction, envy, and the slow erosion of your focus. You're reminded of Mark Douglas, who warned that trading is a solitary path. Your rewards are private, and so are your losses. You're not trying to win popularity contests. You're trying to preserve your edge at all costs. Renaissance's secrecy wasn't just about hiding formulas. It was about resisting the pull of the herd. Have you ever felt drawn to mimic others, to chase the latest market fad? Simons' team went the other way. They avoided the noise, kept to their fortress, and let results, not hype, do the talking. Compare this with the cautionary tales in Bellafiore's One Good Trade, where traders who broadcast their positions end up second-guessing, self-sabotaging, or worse, feeding their own biases. Simons built a culture where silence was golden and focus was everything. This isn't about arrogance. It's about psychological mastery. When you stop needing to prove yourself to others, you finally start trading for the right reasons. You become immune to FOMO, resistant to envy, indifferent to praise or criticism. Your only conversation is with your system, your edge, and your results. Trade in silence, the Renaissance culture whispers. Let your performance speak. For you, the lesson is clear and powerful. Protect your secrets, resist the urge to seek approval, and understand that true trading success requires solitude and restraint. You're not missing out by keeping your cards close. You're ensuring that your advantage endures. The market rewards those who value substance over show, process over performance, silence over noise. And when you're tempted to let your guard down, remember the ultimate irony. The loudest voices in trading are almost never the most successful. Simons and his team thrived in the shadows, becoming the quiet legends of Wall Street. If you want to play the long game, learn to guard your edge as fiercely as you guard your capital. You confront the human cost that comes with chasing perfection and sustaining outperformance, because Simons' journey wasn't just a parade of victories and growing wealth. There's a darker, more sobering reality. The relentless pursuit of an edge extracts a toll, not only on yourself, but on those around you. If you think that discipline and secrecy are enough, ask yourself, are you prepared for the sacrifices that come with true mastery? Inside Renaissance, the pressure was relentless. Imagine being surrounded by geniuses, where every day is a new test, every strategy is one bad run away from being scrapped, and the stakes, financial and reputational, are measured in millions. For Simons and his team, the drive for perfection often meant long hours, missed family events, and relationships strained to the breaking point. Simons himself, as Zuckerman details, paid dearly. His obsession with decoding the markets contributed to personal struggles and family tragedies. Success, he might warn you, demands a price. Are you sure you know what that is? It's a stark contrast to the fantasy many have about trading, the image of total freedom, easy money, and endless leisure. The truth is closer to a grind, sleepless nights, endless testing, and a constant gnawing fear that your edge could vanish tomorrow. Have you ever stared at your trading screen after a loss, replaying what you could have done differently? Now imagine the same feeling, but magnified by the knowledge that your results affect an entire team, a fund, and your own legacy. Renaissance's story reminds you that the market is indifferent to your personal life, your health, your happiness. The pressure to perform never truly goes away. The pursuit of ever greater returns became, for some on the team, an obsession. Zuckerman describes not just the professional triumphs, but the marriages and friendships that faltered, the personal demons that surfaced when trading became the center of existence. Simons' own family life suffered. He faced unimaginable loss with the deaths of 2 sons, and he struggled with the question that haunts many high achievers. Is the sacrifice worth it? This is where trading psychology becomes more than theory. Douglas and Tendler warn that obsession with results at the expense of balance leads to burnout and emotional collapse. Simons' story is a lesson in both the brilliance and the fragility of the human mind under pressure. The greatest traders you learn are not those who feel nothing, but those who learn to manage their emotions, their ambitions, and their boundaries. Bellafiore's advice echoes here. You need a life outside of trading, or trading will consume your life. At Renaissance, the price of sustained success was a kind of monastic devotion. Brilliant, but isolating. You're forced to ask yourself, how much are you willing to give for the next level of mastery? Where is the line between discipline and self-destruction? Take this as both a warning and a call to action. Yes, trading at the highest level requires intense focus, but it also demands self-awareness. You must balance your drive for edge with the need for meaning, connection, and health. The Medallion Fund's story proves that perfection is a moving target. Chasing it can bring glory, but also profound cost. Before you pursue your own trading holy grail, count the cost, set your boundaries, and remember, true mastery is knowing when to push and when to pause. You witness a philosophy that refuses to stand still, a culture of learning and adaptation that becomes the engine for sustained, almost unthinkable outperformance. The Renaissance story doesn't settle for a single breakthrough or a fixed set of rules. If you've ever thought, I've finally figured it out, you're exactly where Simons and his team never allowed themselves to be. Their core belief, the market is always changing, and your survival depends on relentless evolution. At Renaissance, adaptation was not just encouraged, it was mandatory. Every strategy was under constant review. The team expected what worked yesterday to stop working tomorrow. The attitude was almost paranoid, but it's a paranoia rooted in reality. How many traders do you know who found success for a while, only to be destroyed when the market regime shifted? Simons was obsessed with never letting that happen. He built systems not just for finding edges, but for measuring when those edges faded, and for ruthlessly retiring ideas that no longer delivered. This mindset is the opposite of complacency. Compare it to the fatal flaw of so many traders who mistake a run of good results for permanent skill. As Douglas warns, the moment you feel certain, the market will humble you. Tendler pushes you to analyze your own feedback loop, to treat every result as information, not identity. For Renaissance, this was more than advice. It was law. Their models had to be robust, flexible, and above all self-correcting. You can picture it, rooms full of PhDs arguing over every anomaly, a dip in performance, every tiny change in correlation. It wasn't drama, it was survival. The real lesson for you? Don't fall in love with your edge. Fall in love with finding new ones. Every system has a shelf life. Every edge decays. The market is a living, breathing, predatory system that punishes those who get lazy or arrogant. Simons' team never stopped dissecting their own code, mining new data sets, stress testing theories, and rebuilding models, even after years of wild outperformance. You must develop a similar hunger, a relentless curiosity. Are you improving, or are you clinging to the past? This never-ending adaptation is what set Renaissance apart. Zuckerman details how, as new competitors emerged and markets evolved, Simons' crew doubled down on research, innovation, and learning. When a strategy stopped working, they didn't mourn its passing. They celebrated the discovery and moved on. You must embrace the same attitude. Every failed idea is a stepping stone, not a setback. Practical benefit? The world's greatest traders are those who adapt fastest. Whether it's a new market, a new technology, or a sudden regime change, you need to build learning into your process. Review your trades not for confirmation, but for clues on what's changing. Invite criticism. Study your failures. Build a process that values new evidence above old habits. Simons' philosophy is a call to stay humble, stay curious, and stay hungry. The world of trading punishes the static and the stubborn. The secret is to see yourself not as a finished product, but as a constant work in progress. The legacy of Renaissance isn't just their returns, it's their refusal to ever stop learning. Let that be your guide. You learn the greatest lesson of all. It's not brilliance or algorithms that separate winners from losers. It's your psychology when the chips are down. Every trader loves the highs. But how do you respond to drawdowns, doubt, and the agony of being wrong? For Simons and the Medallion team, weathering the storm wasn't just a feature, it was the core of their success. You're reminded, time and again, that managing your emotions is more powerful than predicting any single market move. Renaissance's journey was filled with gut-wrenching drawdowns and terrifying streaks of losses. Zuckerman gives you a window into these moments. The sleepless nights, the meetings thick with anxiety, the very real fear that the magic had run out. If you've ever watched your P&L melt before your eyes, you know the feeling. Now multiply that by billions and the weight of an entire institution. This is where most traders break. But Simons's team had a psychological framework that gave them the courage to persist. The secret? They didn't identify with single trades or even bad weeks. The process was everything. Each loss was data, not damnation. They were trained to detach their self-worth from outcomes. This echoes Mark Douglas's Trading in the Zone, where the trader learns to become process-oriented rather than outcome-oriented. Simons's people were almost clinical. After every streak of losses, they reviewed the models, checked assumptions, then returned, without panic, to the discipline of execution. You're not trying to win every trade, they would remind each other. You're trying to win over thousands. The greatest psychological edge was emotional resilience. Jared Tendler writes about tilt, the destructive spiral after a string of losses. Renaissance built systems to keep humans away from the controls at precisely those moments. If a model was struggling, it was scrutinized, but the trader never took over just to satisfy the need for control. That humility and discipline is rare. How often have you blown up a good plan in a moment of frustration or fear? Simons's legacy is the systematization of emotional management. Automate the process, neutralize the ego, and let the data do the heavy lifting. Bellafiore emphasizes in One Good Trade that the best traders endure slumps not by reinventing themselves every day, but by doubling down on review, on process, and on learning from each mistake. That's what Renaissance did. Losses weren't shameful. They were expected, budgeted, and dissected. You're invited to take the same approach. Detach, analyze, improve, repeat. The market is always testing your discipline, always tempting you to react emotionally. Your real job is to become immune to that test. Practical action? Develop rituals for drawdowns. Don't try to fix things emotionally. Fix them procedurally. Review your process with ruthless honesty. Seek feedback, not comfort. Remember, your edge is your ability to endure when others give up. When you master your response to loss, you gain a superpower that no algorithm can replace. Let Simons's experience serve as your rallying cry. When chaos strikes, you don't need to be a genius. You need to be relentless. Master the discipline of losses, and you'll find the consistency the crowd can only dream about. You extract the hard-earned, actionable lessons from Simons's Odyssey, translating a billionaire's path into tools for your own journey. What should you do with the knowledge that markets can be cracked, but only by those willing to sacrifice comfort, ego, and certainty? This final chapter calls you to make the philosophy real, shaping your psychology and your strategy for a lasting edge. First, you learn that trading is a journey of humility. Simons never pretended to know what would work next. He only committed to finding out. Are you willing to admit what you don't know, to start each session as a student, not a master? The market doesn't reward the loudest or the boldest. It rewards the most adaptable. Your job isn't to beat every trade. It's to become relentless in learning and adjustment. Second, you discover the power of process over prediction. The Renaissance team didn't try to forecast every tick. They built robust systems, trusted their research, and executed through every cycle. Boom, bust, or sideways grind. For you, that means abandoning the fantasy of the perfect trade. Your discipline is your edge. Set rules, test them, refine without mercy. Never let a single win or loss distract you from the bigger process. Third, you are reminded of the cost and necessity of solitude and secrecy. Simons protected his edge with silence. He didn't seek validation from peers, nor did he try to teach the market. In a world obsessed with social proof and instant feedback, your greatest power may be the ability to focus, to guard your strategies, and to stay humble. The next time you feel the urge to broadcast your moves, remember, the market is not a stage. It's a battlefield. Fourth, you see that the pain of losses is not just a hazard, but a requirement. Simons's team endured legendary drawdowns and kept going. The discipline to review, adapt, and trust the system is what made them legends. You must build rituals and review processes for your own setbacks. Learn, adapt, and never take it personally. Let every setback harden your resolve. Finally, you recognize the ultimate lesson. Edge is temporary. Adaptation is forever. The only certainty in trading is change. Simons's relentless drive to adapt, to outlearn, and to outwork the competition is your blueprint for survival. Are you committed to the daily, sometimes painful process of growth? Will you build your own fortress of curiosity, discipline, and self-awareness? If you take anything from Simons's story, let it be this. Your job is not to be right, but to become better. Every day. The next chapter of your trading story is unwritten. You're invited to approach it with the same restless spirit that made Renaissance immortal. Which part should you read first? Start with the chapters on process and discipline. These are the foundation for everything that follows. How should you apply it? Build a system. Review every trade. Seek the truth, not comfort. Question your beliefs. Stay humble and embrace the grind. The Medallion Fund's rise is a call to action. Be relentless, be rigorous, and be willing to rewrite your rules. The market belongs to those who evolve. You have everything you need if you have the courage to begin. So, what if you applied even a fraction of Simons's relentless curiosity, humility, and discipline to your own trading? Over the last 10 sections, you've stepped into the mind and culture that turned Renaissance Technologies into the most successful trading firm in history. You've learned that the edge isn't in a magic formula or secret signal. It's in your ability to challenge your assumptions, to sacrifice ego for process, to persist through setbacks, and to adapt without end. Every lesson, every painful drawdown, every review session is a stepping stone, not a setback. Simons's journey makes one thing clear. True success is earned, not through predictions, but through mastery of self, system, and perpetual growth. Now is your time to act. Read the chapters that break down process and discipline first. Build your own system, review every trade, and hold yourself to the highest standard. Apply these lessons by refusing to settle for comfort or shortcuts. Choose the hard path of honest feedback and relentless improvement. Start now, because the market will not wait for you to catch up. If you found value in this breakdown of The Man Who Solved the Market, let me know by liking, commenting, and subscribing. Share your thoughts. What's your biggest trading struggle? Which lesson will you apply first? Stay tuned for more deep dives into the psychology and discipline behind the world's greatest traders. Your journey starts here. The rest is up to you. We explored Jim Simons's path from unconventional outsider to Wall Street legend. Each section detailed how relentless curiosity, radical humility, process over prediction, and the discipline to adapt drove Renaissance's enduring edge. The story is a blueprint for traders seeking not just results, but resilience. The call to action is clear. Challenge your thinking, protect your edge, and never stop evolving. Like, comment, and subscribe to continue sharpening your trading mindset. Your breakthrough awaits.